Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and I figured I'd show you a little build that I've been using as of late for the vampires. Call it Crypt Horror Show, and basically as the leader you want to choose Manfred von Karstein, just because he is kind of the strongest of the leaders. Take a Barded Nightmare here rather than Zombie Dragon. Yes, Zombie Dragon makes you strong, but it makes you vulnerable up in the air with no place to land, so definitely bring a way to stay on the ground. I do take a Banshee with this build because it has Ethereal and it causes Terror, so this allows you to take out key units that can't really do the correct type of damage against you. Then I bring 4 zombies with 2 skeleton spearmen. Those are to hold the flanks. I have a couple kind of light infantry there. Then the heavy are hitting Graveguard with great weapons, and then here is kind of the core hitting force. 4 Crypt Horrors with a black coach here, which is anti-infantry, causes terror. In combination, those can tear through ranks of the enemy. So I'm going to be releasing a couple different videos staggered over time. All of them kind of using this build, but in different scenarios. In this one in particular, I'm just going to kind of go over the deployment. Although the battle does go in kind of a different way than I would typically use this build. In terms of the deployment, this is how I usually do it. So I send my zombies up through the front. Then I put skeletons on either flank. I put my heroes and kind of special single character units in the center. And I'll go over kind of what the strategy is after that. I put these 2 kind of functional infantry units down in the center to help support. And the center is supposed to be flexible to go either way. Then I have kind of my reserves in the back, so the Graveguard and then the Crypt Horrors in the way back, just so they stay out of range of enemy spells and missiles and what have you. So the main strategy here is you have your zombie front, and they're mainly supposed to move up slowly but surely, creep their way up and close the distance on the enemy. You push left and right on the flanks with these spearmen to hold back, and then you have this center group of heroes that can, go to reinforce, and they kind of function as your sweepers, and they help push out and secure the flank positions for you. Ultimately, the goal of this build is to activate your reserves, and especially bring in these Crypt Horrors on the flank where they can be super effective. Then, once you've kind of secured the flanks and have closed to range, you're going to have troops here, here, and here. And then at that point, this is where you would go ahead and spring your trap from the center, from the flanks, and kind of do an all-out surround. So it does take multiple steps. The first step is going to be sweeping the flanks with a slow push. 2 is going to be sending your heroes to swat back enemy charges on either flank. / exploit gaps, and then third phase is going to be to move in with your Crypt Horrors around the flanks and crush anything that's been tied down at that point. So what you're going to see in this battle is an opponent who deploys far away and has, he's the Empire. He's going to have a bunch of these Demigryph Knights. So I don't necessarily get the chance to do the tactics that I just explained here, but I wanted to show the versatility at least of this build. I will, like I said, have a couple follow-up videos where I show this build in action. Now, the reason I bring Crypt Horrors is because they are some of the most cost-effective monster units in the game. They only cost about, I think it's 800 apiece, something like that, and they stand their ground and do a lot of damage for a long time. I've seen some people try and spam them completely, and I do believe that they can beat a complete Demigryph spam. So they're definitely very strong. So for this build, I just wanted to bring 4. 4 of the same units is not considered overpowered. So just wanted to bring their slight OP-ness to bear, but not to the point where it was overwhelming. So anyways, here you can see a little bit of the strategy in action. As I start pushing forward, I activate my hero units in the center, and they're going to be sent to the left to push back the enemy that's trying to hold the flank here. Moving forward with Manfred is going to be important. What you want to try and do is, if you have hefty targets like this, casting Fate of Juna to try and take out those units. Although you have to remain wary of enemy spellcasters who may try and snipe you, which is exactly why I kept Manfred on a mount so that I can retreat him at a moment's notice. Now, these 3 heroes are very good. They're very versatile. So the Banshee is going to be very good in this position. She's quick, she's fast, and she's ethereal, so she really doesn't take that much damage from the Crypt Horrors. The black coach is there in case I have to deal with infantry, and so it has anti-infantry buffs. Meanwhile, Manfred is just going to stay close, he's going to cycle, and the black coach is just going to be here to move around. You can see it already took some hits, so as Manfred don't be afraid to, regain some of your winds of magic, and also use some rejuvenation on your heroes in the front, so that can keep you up and running. On the right, I'm also being charged, so at this point, this is where you want to, use the zombies to absorb charges and try and close in on them with some of your other support units. So for instance here, this is why I have the skeleton spearman on that flank, and then I'm now moving forward with my crypt horrors on either flank again to help with the sweeping maneuver. Now I'm starting to get pulled a little bit out of position here, so I'm going to try and reform just a bit, but all the while my main force is slowly creeping forward, and that's the point of the zombies, or sorry, the vampire counts, is that you need to creep your army forward. It's very slow. And so most of the time you'll notice I'm just spending my time here sniping enemy forces up close, slowly pushing and securing my flanks, and making sure that when I do take hit from cannons and whatnot, that I can go ahead and heal it with my hero. So now my opponent, who wanted to kite with his Demigryph Knights, has kind of seen himself push back rather significantly, and I've gotten some nice exchanges. So I'm going to start to reform a bit. Crypt horrors are going to start to push on the flanks. It's kind of up to you to judge when you push up the crypt horrors. They're very important to push up the flanks, but again, moving them too aggressively can expose them to attack. So now we've arrived kind of at the end of phase 1, which was to secure the flanks and close ground. So now we're going to move into phase 2, which is when you can start your assault. So I've reformed kind of into the main formation we had in the beginning. Again, keeping the chump blocks of the zombies in the front, moving the skeleton spearmen around the flanks, and then the heroes returning to the center once again so they can remain flexible in their positioning. Crypt horrors may be a little bit too far ahead. What I like to do is keep them front and center, just so they can, if need be, they can pivot to one side en masse. I think pre-deploying them to the flanks can sometimes be too premature. Your opponent could, for instance, shift all the Demigryph Knights to one side and counteract you pretty handedly, and it makes it so that you can't really reshuffle them. So that's why I like to keep them usually in the center as a strategic reserve. But seeing how in this case my opponent did form up in a somewhat of a ball, in a knot here atop the hill, that I could at least bear to move around the flanks. On the left there, you saw my opponent trying to sally out with some demis, and this is where I reacted with 2 of my heroes, and that caused him to rethink his options. You can see my Banshee's still there at full strength. Moving forward my rear lines, and now the Crypt horrors can commit to the flanks. It's important not to commit certain heroes in certain situations, so here I'm obviously sending in the Banshee first, and the Black Coach has no need to be in that action, so he's going to go ahead and retreat. So if you're playing with this build, always mind you what the use of everything is. The Banshee's actually pretty good against almost anything. I would generally try and use her to blunt enemy charges and attack units that don't have the ability to deal damage to ethereal forces. What I'm going to do here is I've spotted a swordsman unit, and so the Black Coach as anti-infantry is going to come in and sweep into that from the flank. Now typically what you want to do with your Black Coach is keep microing it, land a strike like there, and pull out immediately, but because I'm microing elsewhere, I'm not going to be able to pull it out in time. That is a problem that I'm having right here. And so it's actually going to get charged by a greatsword, so I really need to pull it out of there. Carl France is coming in as well, so you should pop your abilities. I'm going to pop the ability that gives me more attack. Probably should have popped the one that gives me more damage resistance, but I figured I wanted to do as much damage as possible, knowing that it will probably die. So I'm having to micro kind of a lot. Manfred comes in here. You want to move him in as a support character, so move him into these tight-knit blobs, pop that ability, and then do the, pop everything on these blobs to make sure you get as cost-effective as possible. Fate of Juna, again, just to get rid of unit blobs, and now I'm going to start to push in the center. On this flank, 2 Crypt horrors fighting a Demigryph Knight. Cost-effective wise, yes, the demis will take out one of my Crypt horrors, but they cost about half, so pretty happy with that exchange. And I have, of course, skeleton spearmen on either flank to help support. The center, meanwhile, is being tied down by my zombies. And then I noticed that there are greatswords pushing down the center, so I'm going to pull out and wait to bring in my Graveguard with great weapons. On this flank, I made sure that the enemies got isolated before I fought them, so that flank should be secured. Now here, don't take engagements you don't need to. You saw how I pulled away from that greatsword. Now that it's outnumbered, it's going to go ahead and retreat, and that's exactly what I wanted to do anyways. I didn't want to needlessly lose a unit. So what I'm going to do at this point is actually raise some undead here. That you really want to be using Manfred very actively to get the best bang for your buck. Be popping spells all the time. So if you run into a case where, you know, I just have 2 units moving up here, and I really want to tie down this entire force, so the easiest way to do that is going to be to pop zombies. And then what Manfred could do is actually pull out of that position, having popped the zombies, and go ahead and recommit on another point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Front lines are charging, grave guards are pulling into the center, and the left now I beat those demis. So looks like the flanks are being ones. This is pushing on phase 3 where I'm fighting on both flanks, and now I'm going to commit to an attack down the center. You want to definitely babysit Manfred. If he goes down, your entire army is liable to collapse, and so you can see Karl Franz here starting to disengage so he can try and go after Manfred. So what I'm going to have to do is pull him out of here, fall back to my Graveguard units. Deathclaw went right after my Banshee, popped some abilities, and so my Banshee is going to be routing, but look how many units she's tying down. That is why I bring that Banshee, super helpful. Meanwhile, you can see on that flank I'm winning out against some swordsmen. Demis are routing, and in the center I'm wrapping around those Graveguard. Again, using Manfred to come close to troops, pump abilities, and then disengage from hero fights. I would say don't get into hero fights as the vampire counts. It's very, very dangerous. One of the things that could have gone wrong is notice how Manfred is being chased here. If he was on a mounted unit, there would be no way to get away from Deathclaw. You have no ranged units as the vampire count, so there's no way to sport unless you do bring your own flying units. But I very much prefer having your heroes on horseback. Now I'm closing in for the final assault down the center. So as this build was mentioned before, I mean it's called the Crypt Horror Show. But in this map, my Crypt, in this engagement, my Crypt Crypt Horrors have basically been blunted. They've been wasted in charges against demis on either flank. In most cases where I use this build, they will survive till the end game, and this is where you would have them flanking around, hitting the opponents in the back. I'll have more videos in the future where I do manage to pull that type of play off, but I figured I'd show at least a different type of engagement for this video to show a bit of the flexibility of the build. Manfred at this point should not be static. He should be used as a one-man hammer and anvil force to free up your units and really keep the zombies going, or keep your green. I'm stumbling over my words. Keep your vampire count forces going. You want to be strategically knocking out units here and there, getting critical mass, and just freeing up the horde of undead to keep going about, keeping them at healthy levels, making sure to pop the ability that ups the winds of magic. So it's definitely a micro-intensive build, but it's a very fun one I found. And then use this buff as well pretty routinely. Make sure your forces are operating at top condition. And then here, finally at the end, I'm going to commit myself to a fight against Karl Franz, but only at the very end. And so there you go, pulled off a Pyrrhic victory. So this build is fun, it's relatively balanced, and it doesn't rely too much on an excessive amount of Crypt Horrors. It doesn't rely on an abuse of Spirit Leech and stuff like that. So overall, I think it's a fair, fun, and balanced vampire counts build that does prove to be pretty sustainable. Although in this battle, the Crypt Horrors did not really show off their skill, and overall, I didn't get that many kills, but still, it proves its worth. And like I said, I'll have more videos in the future fighting against different races, so you can see how you can tailor it to different battles. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. See ya.